I review four different scientific studies in the literature, professional literature. First, a DNA genetic sequencing of the Wuhan coronavirus by scientists in France and Canada, and their conclusion is that it has gain-of-function properties. As we've discussed before, gain-of-function properties is only useful for offensive biological warfare work, and it has to be done in either a BSL-4 or a BSL-3 facility. And we know that Wuhan is a BSL-4 facility, and it said quite clearly when it was opening up, it was there to deal with coronaviruses and SARS. SARS is a weaponized version of the coronavirus. Wuhan has worked on that before. There have been already reported 2 or 3 leaks from there, so I suspect that's what happened here. Second, then, and you can find all these scientific articles on the interview, is a scientific article reported by the scientist at the University of North Carolina. It is clear that if you just read through it, that they were engaged in gain-of-function DNA genetic engineering on the SARS coronavirus. Likewise, if you read the study, one of the researchers there was one of the top biological warfare experts from China, and he, or that expert, I can't tell if it's a he or a she, but the name is there, was from the Wuhan BSL-4 facility. That's right on the scientific article itself. So it is clear that part of the technology here involved in this coronavirus came from that University of North Carolina lab. The last time I looked, it was BSL-3. Now, I had already condemned that lab before for doing gain-of-function work on MERS, Middle East Respiratory System, which is also a weaponized version of coronavirus. MERS is 33% lethal. The SARS is about 10%. And what we're seeing now with the Wuhan coronavirus is 15 to 18%, 15% by Lancet, 17% if you disaggregate statistics by the Chinese government, which are misleading on purpose, 18% by a British health authority. But it is clear then that there's a direct connection then between this Nazi biological warfare work at the University of North Carolina and Wuhan. It's just there and read it. So obviously this researcher took it back to Wuhan. The third article I discussed, again, scientific article, someone from that Wuhan facility also worked with scientists in Australia to DNA genetically engineer SARS together with HIV, which we've discussed before. And you have that Indian study with the pictures and everything saying that the current coronavirus involves HIV and SARS. Now, it appears political pressure was brought to bear on those Indian scientists. You know, Prime Minister Modi there is trying to have good relations with China and President Xi. But I read that study. I saw the pictures. It's undeniable. So I think what happened here then. Oh, and by the way, that too, if you read the study, clearly a scientist from Wuhan was involved with the Australian scientists, and the Chinese government paid for it. So this is not a case of China stealing this technology. They bought and paid for it. They bought their way into it. So I think, Spiros, what happened then is that the people there at Wuhan took the technology from North Carolina and the technology from this Australian study and tried to DNA genetically engineer it together to create a chimera of three elements at least. The SARS coronavirus, the gain of function technology from the University of North Carolina, and then the SARS HIV technology from Australia to create a sort of a turbocharged biological warfare agent. We saw this with the swine flu. Swine flu clearly had three elements that were DNA genetically engineered together in a biological warfare lab. So I believe that is what has happened here. And indeed now, the final study I discussed, two scientists from China itself, and you can see the study there, concluded that this probably leaked out of that Wuhan coronavirus. So you can read those four studies, for yourself and draw your own conclusions. They're all there annexed to my the transcript. But certainly that was my conclusion. You'll also note that the North Carolina contract was funded by the National Institutes for Health and NIAID, the National Institute for Allergy and Infected Diseases. So they're up to their eyeballs in this. They knew exactly what they were funding, and they were funding it with Wuhan. And that is why then we are getting total disinformation, lies, and propaganda by Fauci, by the National Institutes of Health, by NIAID, this woman, Les Monnier, if that's how you pronounce her name, and the CDC. I've also discussed with you why the WHO is lying about it and covering it up. So that, I think, is the importance of the interview I'm giving to you here today to try to, cut through all this. If we're seeing all this mass confusion and pandemonium, it is because the highest level officials, certainly the United States government, the British government, the Japanese government, and others, will refuse to admit that this is an offensive biological warfare agent, because they're all doing the exact same thing.